Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Hearth. Today is Monday, December 16th, 2024, and we have with us Marmot Snetsinger, who lives up in Montana and runs a childcare daycare center up there called Little Twigs. And we're really happy to have you here with us today, Marmot. I'm curious if you want to just start out by just telling us a little bit about who you are.
Oh, well, thanks for having me. Um, well, right, I've reinvented myself many times. So somebody asked me who I am. It depends on the context. Um, but right now, I live with my wife and up in Montana, and I run a child care center that is a very diverse child care center. We employ and empower 30 refugee women and immigrants. We have some American staff as well, but we employ a lot of people that don't speak English, and some of them don't read or write, and they might be recent arrivals to the United States. And then we employ them at our center, and we have 85 children. We're licensed for 85 children, so we have about half of those are our staff's children, and then half are from the community of Missoula, Montana. Um, so who I am is a very busy person most of the time. Taking a little break right now. Um, but I love being around babies and young kids. And I love being around diverse cultures. And I feel like it's such a privilege every day to go to work and be in this hugely global environment. Makes me really happy. And we speak 7 languages at the center every day. So I get my brain workout every day. Um, and anyways, that's a little bit about who I am and what I'm doing.
There's so many different places where we could go with what you just said. But one thing that I just want to include is you said right now you're on a break. And do you want to tell us where you are and maybe with who?
Oh, well, yeah, I'm in Tucson, Arizona, visiting my daughter and soaking up some sunshine. And um, what I'm doing is handing the reins over to my staff. And I really can only do that if I step away, because when I'm there, people come with all kinds of questions. And so I periodically, for my own sanity, but also as for training purposes, I kind of have to step away and hand the reins off to other people and let them grow in their leadership abilities and to handle the small everyday crises, um, and call me if they need to. Uh, but for the most part, it's like you don't really know how to run something until somebody walks away and you're actually running it. So my goal was to have other people running it. We're 5 years in now, and it's working a little bit. So
Well, thank you so much for being with us here today. I'm really glad to have you here and find out a little bit more about you and your background. And I know one of the things that I mentioned earlier before we started this interview was that I was reading about how you started into this area and that you had a lot of experience in Africa. I'm curious if you want to tell us a little bit about that.
yeah, well, that was in my late 20s. And I actually ended up going to Kenya, and I lived there for 2 years, and I was leading safaris. I was leading wilderness safaris. Um, and I learned Swahili, and I learned a lot about Arabic culture and little bits of Arabic. And I had no idea that, 35 years later, my Swahili skills would be needed in Missoula, Montana, as part of my work. But it was one of those things where it's like, wow, this is really uncanny that these skills came back to me in that experience. But I traveled a lot as a young person, and I really got the power of being welcomed for as you are, for whoever you are, into a different culture, um, and the graciousness of people to do that. And I really just fell in love with Arabic culture, um, and I fell in love with African culture. And I realized that there were so many ways that the cultures were so different from the culture I grew up in. And so, in some ways, the skills that I can use from that experience are just understanding some of the cultural nuance of what my staff might be thinking, because it might be quite different than the way I'm thinking about things. And I really have to slow myself down and let them express to me, like, their upsets, or their insights, because I think of a lot of the community that we built is really built on what all of these different women from around the world have really brought.
Sounds amazing. Like, I'm curious if you name so many different languages. Can you name all the different languages that are spoken where you at Little
Yes.
Twigs?
Yeah, so we have Kiswahili, which is a lot of the women are coming from Central Africa, from the Congo, but there's been 20 years of war in the Congo, and people have escaped to different places. So depending upon where they go to, they end up speaking Kirundi, Kiswahili. Um, some of them spoke Portuguese because they escaped to Angola. And they usually all speak a tribal language from the Congo that's their own tribal language. And then they might speak Kiswahili, and then they might speak French on top of that. Um, and then we have several women that are from Eastern Africa, from Eritrea, and they speak Tigrinya. They might also speak Amharic, and one of them speaks some Arabic as well. And then we have a lot of different women from Afghanistan. And they started coming over right after Kabul fell. And there's three different languages that we have at the center from people from Afghanistan. So there's
Mhm.
Dari and Pashto and Nuristani. So those three languages. And then we have a lot of women from Syria and the surrounding areas, and from Iraq and Yemen. And they all speak Arabic, some variations, different dialects of Arabic. Um, and then we have a couple of women from the Blackfoot Nation. So they're American Indian, and I think those are most of them. But we have a lot of women that speak no English, but they might speak four languages. We have a lot of women that are not literate in any language, but they might speak four or five languages. And so we just communicate through this wide web of, like, do you know Arabic? No, but she does, and she knows Arabic and French, and so she can speak to you. And then Google Translate and phone translators have come a long ways, and so we're able to use that. But some women don't know how to use that technology, so um, we just have to do the best we can. And we make mistakes, embarrassing mistakes. I make embarrassing mistakes every day. I offend people every day. People offend me every day. And we just have to roll with it and keep going. But we're around toddlers and babies and kids. And so it's the environment to mess up and try again, because all the babies are learning language as well. So we just do the best.
Sounds so beautiful. I really hear you speak about, just welcoming in who people are. And I know that's really part of one of the principles that we really follow. And it sounds like such a lovely example of that.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's incredible to welcome them and to feel welcomed into their lives. And you know, and we've had a couple of big storm events and different events that have happened, and realized that what a resource the center is for incoming women. They've just arrived in the United States. Maybe they're pregnant, maybe they have a baby, or they have young children, and they come to the center, and all of a sudden they have a community. They have some people that speak their language. I have other women have been through what they've been through, um, either been displaced by war, or just know the experience of leaving family, and then they're welcomed to this place where they feel really safe and secure. And on top of everything, they're supposed to be making a living, because it's the United States. You got to work. And they get to come to work and take care of their baby. Like, that's their job, is to take care of their baby and maybe another baby. Or maybe they want to work with older kids and they work with multiple babies. But for the most part, when they first arrive, their job is just sit in the room, if they have a young baby, to take care of their baby and be there and just adjust, and they get paid for that.
Mm,
Wow.
what a beautiful model.
I've never heard of anything like what you've created. It's uh unique. I feel like you're a pioneer, and this is a beautiful experiment.
It's not always so beautiful.
Yeah,
It's
well, it's
been a
real.
very messy experiment.
It's very real. Um, I'm curious because the little bit that I know about you, Marmot, I always experience you as a very integral person. And I know that you have also trained in the Castellino work
Mhm.
and are familiar with the principles and had an intention to incorporate what you could of that work into uh, this beautiful little twigs. And I'm curious what your experience has been about that or how you've been able to integrate that. Is there anything you could share with us about that?
Yeah, well, I first met Ray, it was probably 20 years ago, and I did a womb surround with him, and I was teaching Montessori preschool at the time. And I was so excited about the principles, and I thought, well, you're talking about doing this with parents. We got to do this at school. I mean, we're like critical to these kids, and our group and the group field is, uh, a childcare is like talk about a group field. Um, and so I took things that he had offered, just like brief, frequent eye contact between caregivers. And I went back to the school and I said, hey, I just found out about this. Do you guys want to try this? What would happen if the preschool teachers or the daycare workers actually made contact with each other intentionally? And what would shift with the kids, And that's still a work in progress. Like we try to hold team meetings every week. We call them roses and thorns instead of check-ins. But it's just you know I'm introducing it to women who maybe I show the concept of the rose, the pretty parts and the thorny parts, and we do check-ins like that. So there's a part of just connecting with the staff. That's one of those principles, like you would have parents connect. And I think that makes a huge difference for the field for the kids.
Mm.
What I didn't realize when I started this place is most of the cultures where these women are coming from are much better at that than we are. Far better. They know how to raise babies in community, and that's one of the skill sets they bring. It's just naturally for them to sit there, and I mean, a bunch of African women sitting in the room taking care of babies. That's what they thought they were going to do their whole lives. Different things happened. They didn't plan on coming to America. They never heard of working in a childcare. It just didn't make any sense. But what they already naturally do is some of the things that we might, as Americans, try to teach ourselves how to do or to communicate with others. But that's one of the skill sets they already bring. Um, yeah. So there's been surprises along the way where I'm like, oh, I have this intentionality of, creating a group field, and it's like, oh, wait a minute. I'm the one that's not very good at this. These guys are great at it. Okay. And then there's other places where I've taught a group of Afghan women. We were talking about the principle of choice. We had a training day for the teachers, and I was talking to them about the principles. And so here I have a room full of Afghan women who have been fled their homes, been forced to live this life under the Taliban, just getting worse and worse. Um, and I'm talking about choice, and it was such a powerful conversation. It's like, where do you have choice? You didn't even have a choice about coming to America. You just ran onto a cargo plane with your children. One of them, 8 months pregnant, ran onto the cargo plane and just arrived into this country that she didn't know. She didn't speak the language, so we're talking to them about choice, and it's like, where do you have choice, and where in Little Twigs at this child care center can you take choice? Where can I give you choice? It's like, if your heart's desire is you really love to cook, well, maybe you want to run a restaurant. That's your future. Maybe you don't want to be in childcare. Um, let's give you the skill set to shop for the food and take inventory, some skills that you might not have, and 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 help you steer and empower you to do the things that you want to do. Other people are like, I don't want to take care of my young baby. I want to go take care of the older kids And then when I gotta go home, I'm gonna have energy for my young baby. And other people are like, I want to stay with my young baby. And then as they grow, I want to stay with them the whole time. So those are places where we can give people choice. And that's super powerful for them because they came out of this place where it's like they had a lot of no choice, you know? And so just really meeting with them and helping them figure out that they actually do have choice about different things.
Gosh, what a model. I really love just hearing what you're sharing. So, do you also offer some training there? Is that what I'm also hearing in terms of people who are who love to cook and who are wanting to do that? You said you empower them. Is there something that you also provide?
Yes, well, we have this has been over, over 5 years to develop this, but when we first started, I was doing all the training myself of everybody, and trying to, teach them how to be professionals in a child care center, because I always tell them, it's like, I know you know how to be a parent, you've been raising children since you were very young. I know you know how to be a parent, but this is different now. You're a teacher. And so just really giving them this professional lens. And then I also tell them, if you're teaching from 0 to 5, you're also a brain scientist, because that's when the brain is the most influenced and the most pliable. And so what you're doing is brain science. And so I just try to empower them that it's like what they're doing really matters, because, in the lens of America, childcare workers can get very discounted. Education can get very discounted, but especially early childhood education, it's like the value of that is really discounted. So I try to empower them, like, you have a job, you have a professional job, you're a teacher, you're a brain scientist. And then we have 2 full training days a year where we do different kinds of training. But every week, every woman also gets English class at their ESL level, for an hour. So with a group of women that speak their same level of English, whether it's no English or, more advanced English. So we have a special ESL instructor that comes from the Lifelong Learning College. And so they get that. And then they also have training requirements through the childcare licensing. They have to have 16 credits of training. And now we've doubled that up with the English classes. So I talked to the English instructor and said, we really need to build their vocabulary about childcare emergencies, or we need to build their vocabulary about how to help young children solve a conflict. So we get double the training, and then they get credit for it. So we get to feed 2 birds with 1 stone, say.
One of the things I really appreciate, Marmot, I've been in regular contact with you since you birthed this, from the very beginning. And so one of the things, as I'm listening to you talk about all the different facets that you're creating resources for them, and one of the things I know that there's a lot of processing of trauma of all the different cultures. What I'm curious about is I could feel how busy and how many different people there are, but what is it that you do, like, for example, where you are right now, to find the balance between the needs of so many people and then also resourcing yourself?
Well, I have failed miserably at it for a number of years. And so that is a work in progress, but I do have a regular supervision group weekly with peers, and that's super helpful. And then I have a therapist that I work with as well. That's a great supervisor, and I bring supervision to that person. And when I first started it, I was in a supervision group with Ray, a peer supervision group. So I had that as well. And then, there's that part of me that gets super fed by being with babies and children. And so when things are a little too much for me, I can go just sit in the room with the babies, and that's a resource for me. I mean, it's work as well, but to get loved up by a group of preschoolers, that's one of the greatest gifts you can get. And then also just the women themselves. I have never met so many really incredible human beings that are resilient. And so I learn a lot from them about, I think things are a little hard. I'm a little overwhelmed. And I hear one of their stories, and it's just, it makes my heart bloom that I can be able to help provide resource for them, and that I'm in relationship with these incredible women from around the world. Um, when I first started, I would watch a lot of really horrific movies about refugees and war, and refugees escaping war. And uh, I think for me, it was somewhat of a resource of like, wow, this is where people are coming from, and this is what I'm providing this place. And to be a part of that is so much bigger than me. So when I really need the resource, I tap into those places of like, wow, this thing I'm doing, this thing that we're doing as a community is so much bigger than me. So that's a big resource too. And I try to model some self-care during the day. I bought couches. I bought so many couches at the beginning. I was like, we need naps because I'm a napper. So I model taking a nap every day. And everybody knows it's like, oh, nap time. But I provided places for women to nap or breastfeed in private or whatever. It's like, oh, we have to rest. We have to take care of ourselves. Um, and then also just I hire more staff than, I mean, our staff to child ratio is higher than anybody I've ever heard of in the business, because it's really hard work. I mean, legally in Montana, the state of Montana, and you can have 4 babies and 1 adult caregiver. Well, that is just too much. I don't know how anybody does that, but so we have more like 1 to 2, um, and then the other resource is that we really try to support each other, and really I try to model this as well, that try to provide layers of resource for each other. um, so for example, anytime that I'm going to talk to somebody about something that's difficult, I have to give them a correction, I have to maybe fire them, or have to talk to them about proving something. I always get somebody to be with me while I do that. And I learned that so well from Ray. He was a master of teaching that, of getting support. And so now when I ask my teachers, oh, you have to have this difficult talk, and they're like, oh yeah, I did that, and I called so and so to be with me. And so it's just part of the community now, that if you have to talk to somebody about something difficult, you get support and you support each other.
It's really inspiring to hear how you've been integrating this into the daily details of something that many people experience as overwhelming and chaotic. And I hear how you kind of bring in, and I don't know the right word, but imprint these experiences by modeling it and having meetings. And I like the whole thing of the thorns and the roses. I get the feeling that kind of this is a safe place and anything goes here, and we're a community and we support each other, and we have principles and we have standards we keep. But I've never heard of a childcare place where the ratio is 1 to 2 babies. And what a treat for these babies and children to have so many attentive adults around them, there for them. How big is this place? I mean, it must be a huge place, because
Well, it's 2 buildings. One of them is a big, I mean, we had started with a half of one commercial building, and now this summer we took over the other half. So it's a very large commercial building that was like an office space and another open space. And then we have a small house that's the preschool as well. And I originally had planned to do 0 to 3, but you know, all those 3-year-olds 3 years later needed a place to go. And so we opened up the preschool. But Yeah, and you know, the other really, really remarkable thing about it is not just for me is like when you walk in there, um, it is quite a global community, and that's the thing that just like warms my heart. And watching kids, babies grow up with 3 or 4 languages being spoken to them all the time, women wearing hijab, you know, women who are, you know, from the Congo, very, very black, dark skin. In Missoula, Montana, it's, you know, it's really unusual for kids to get exposed to that much diversity. And to watch these kids and what happens for them uh, as they grow up with that. I can tell you a couple stories of what that looks like for them. Is we had one little baby. He had just learned how to walk, and he went with his older brother to a school, public school, elementary school picnic gathering thing at the beginning of the school year. And so he just got up. It was outside. He saw a woman wearing hijab sitting by herself on the lawn. So he got up and he waddled over. He doesn't even have any words yet. He waddled over and he sat in her lap. And the mom was like, well, I guess I have to go over and talk to this person now and explain to her why my baby's sitting on her lap. But the woman didn't speak any English. She spoke Arabic. And so the mom went over and just smiled and, you know, said a few things, but couldn't really communicate. And then the baby got up and saw a very, very black Congolese woman and went over and started petting their shoulder. And the mom's like, I guess I have to go talk to her now. But she's telling me the story, and I realized this baby is a 1-year-old bridge builder. Like nobody told him to do anything. That's his world. And so he just went to the public school picnic and he built the bridges between this family. And so I always make parents come on a tour to like see and feel and hear what it looks like at our childcare, because it's a little bit different than your standard childcare in Missoula, Montana. And so when I tell them, your kids are going to have this figured out, they know how to switch from, they'll look at their teacher and evaluate whether they speak the same language, and they'll quickly, if it's not the same language, they'll quickly move into gesture, or they'll just like grab a finger and start pulling on the person. They know how to communicate. I said, but to the parents, you're the ones that are going to be challenged. Your kid's going to have this figured out. You're the one that your kid wants to invite all the class for their birthday party, and you're going to have parents there who speak no English, and it's going to be awkward, and you have to figure out how to bridge that gap. Your kids know how to do it. Easy peasy for them. So that's what I always tell the parents. But that's just one story. It's like, oh, those kids are the bridge builders, and they haven't even spoken yet.
That's amazing.
And then I had another little girl that saw, we're right across from the bus stop. I actually chose a building that was right on the main bus line because a lot of the women don't drive, especially when they first get to the United States. But she saw a whole bunch of women coming off the bus wearing hijabs and full Arabic dress. And this little girl, she's just, you know, from Missoula. And she looked over there, she was 3. And she's like, oh, there's our parents. And for one thing, it's like, this is us. That's for her. That was us. All these women, you know, that's her community. This is us. And then for a 3-year-old to say us is another, it's a whole developmental level when you start saying we, this is us, we, instead of just me, or me and mom, or, you know, whatever. They're thinking a little more globally. But for her whole environment had been all these people. So it's just when she says us, she means black and white and Arabic and every kind of person, you know. And the other part about this is that I don't really come out first thing. I meet somebody, I don't go, oh, I'm lesbian, I'm married, this and that. I just am who I am. And then they meet my wife who, you know, she just is who she is, and that she probably helps them learn how to drive or helps them with something else. And they're in great gratitude to her. They're in gratitude for having a place to live. And then it's like, oh, that's what gay means. That's Marmot. And so in this complete mix of all these kinds of people, it might be totally against their religion for somebody to be gay, but I'm just Marmot that's living my life in a way that's helping them. And so we have this huge diverse group that's just, the we is really quite incredible. and the kids know it, and that's who they are. And I think they will be that for their entire lives. I mean, I always tell the parents, I can't wait to hear, your son decides to move to Jordan, and semester abroad is definitely going to be in some Arabic speaking or Kiswahili speaking country or something, because it's in those kids so deep.
Mm.
I wonder if you, well, let me just take a pause. Let me just pause. Yeah, I love your storytelling so much, Marmot. I've been very privileged to hear so many wonderful things about um just so many aspects, the children and the activities you do together. And then I'm also curious about just how you bridge to the community. There's a way that um there there are, events that you go to outside the community, or um, people who work with refugee populations, or early childhood education. So there's a way that what you're doing has become a resource for many communities as well. And I wonder if you would say something about that.
Yeah, well, when we first started, it was COVID. So we started in 2020. Uh, and so the things that I had ideas about that we would do, like more community events, just even with our community that we were growing as part of the childcare, those things didn't happen for a long time. Um, and but slowly over time, I needed help with things. I needed help with finding women to work. And so there's two different, there's a refugee placement office from the International Rescue Committee. And I worked with them almost every day. Well, they'll have an arriving family and like, this woman needs childcare. This woman needs a job. Um, you know, and so we work with them. And then there's also another refugee organization that helps people stabilize. And it's called Soft Landings, and they have all kinds of programs that they've grown over the last bunch of years as well. And so we work collaboratively with them all the time. But then also just with like job service, the Lifelong Learning Center to help do the trainings, the people that teach CPR, the licensing, all of those things, they just came on board because I just needed help with different things that I didn't realize I was building a whole social work organization. But it's kind of what I ended up doing. And then, somebody have housing crisis or a dispute with their landlord. It's like, oh, who helps with this? So it was just a kind of a learning, a deep dive into all the social work aspects of Missoula and who provided what. Um, and slowly over that time, my name and our name of Little Twigs Childcare just grew, and people knew us and what we did. So I would run into people, and they're like, "Oh, I know exactly who you are." I was like, "Really?" I've just been changing diapers all day. I didn't know how, but so word of mouth just started kind of getting out, and then we hit a couple of crisis points, which I think we're headed for some of those again politically, where the government changed the law about childcare subsidies, or things would happen in the childcare industry, and they were just outrageous. And I, my sister works with me daily. She does the bookkeeping and payroll, and something would happen, and she'd be like, "Okay, we need to manage the budget, do this and this and this." And I would get on the phone and call a reporter in Helena, our capital, and be on the front page of the paper across the state, and just be an advocate for what was happening in childcare. And then we have a community on Facebook of other childcare workers that would do things as well. So all of those just grew and grew over the last 5 years, and I think we just a lot of support. We support each other to do things that I used to have to do all myself, all the trainings and whatnot. It's much more a web of people working together. And I have also noticed that there are a couple more childcares that are actually willing to hire refugee women, and that is happening as well. And part of it is that they're realizing that these women, um, once you train them, it takes more intensity and more time to train. But once the training, if it's a good job, they're going to stay. especially if they have their kids there. It's very stable for them. So in the childcare industry, people leave very quickly. 6 months, somebody on a job is like a long-term employee in childcare. Well, my women have been there 4 years, going on 5 years, 3 years. I mean, they come and they stay, and which is really, really awesome for the kids because we raised these babies together. And our first crew that went off to kindergarten, it's like we all told them their baby stories because we all knew their baby stories. It wasn't like I held you as a baby and then somebody came 6 months later, and 6 months later it's like, and then we have returning siblings. Lots of parents having a second child, and they're coming back, and we're raising their sibling as well. And so the fabric of our whole community is really branched out as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm.
So one of the things I really love, Marmot, is when you tell just stories about the children. And I wonder if there's, just without mentioning names, there's a way that there are so many ways about, like, when you do celebrations of Ramadan, for example, or how you settle disputes, or there's so many beautiful stories that I just feel so, I mean, they really feel very heart opening and warm. And I wonder if there's just a story where you really felt like the uniqueness of what you guys are creating expressed itself in just some stories or anecdotes.
Yeah. The one that's kind of coming to my heart and my mind is about a little boy who was his daycare actually had gotten closed. And the licensor, who is my total advocate, the state licensor, she's so supportive, and she called up and said, "Do you have a place for him?" And I was like, "Well, it's kind of a stretch. We don't really. I mean, he could go with the older kids, so he was pretty young, and he came to the preschool, and he entered in. He didn't speak any English. His family was from Syria, and he just sat there with big eyes, looking around the room. And it was just the morning. I was making breakfast. There's probably 4 kids there, and they're all staring at him, and they come up to me and they're like, "Does he speak?" And I said, "Well, I'm not sure if he speaks. I think he probably speaks. He's about 3 years old. He probably speaks, but if he's going to speak, it's going to be in Arabic. So why don't you guys try out some of your Arabic?" And so the kids all know how to say welcome in like 7 languages. That's one of the things that we work on every day, so they can just say welcome to whoever comes in many, many languages. And so they went over there like, "Salam alaikum, marhaba, welcome, how are you?" And his eyes just lit up, and he smiled, and he started waving at them, and he was so excited. I mean, it took 3 Arabic words, and all of a sudden he was welcomed by these kids at his new school. And he's kind of like he's a little bit younger than some of the other kids, so he's kind of like the little mascot, the little side, so they call him my sidekick. But anyways, just to watch him light up and be welcomed in that way was just amazing, because these kids know how to welcome him. And we have teachers that speak to him in Arabic, but to be welcomed by like the whole group of kids in his own language was just profound, So it just doesn't take that much, that many words. It takes like welcome and how are you and a smile, and somebody can feel like they belong.
Mm.
Mm.
That's beautiful.
And then the other part of the thinking of like, how the pre and perinatal stuff, the principles, Alison, you talked about this, get incorporated is, there's a lot of talk. There's a lot of, training, and a lot of talk about trauma-informed care, especially in childcare now, and, diversity and trauma-informed care. But I think when we're holding it in the light of a whole layer of like pre and perinatal history, ancestral history, I mean, I have half of the room. These kids are maybe not even one generation, but have escaped war or one generation from war. And all of the women, besides maybe 3 of us are Americans born in the United States, came from war-torn countries. So there's a lot of trauma in the room. But when you have people with awareness of slowing down, of supporting each other, of making contact with each other, and welcoming each other, there's this certain level of like trauma informed that that I think goes far, far deeper than just being aware that some things are hard for people. And part of that is just giving people many chances, knowing that their behaviors, as adults, behaviors come out of adaptation to environments that were super extreme, but also comes to a place of being with kids in a way that, for example, a child arrives and they're kind of new to daycare and they want to go with their parent's leaving them. It's very hard for the parents, very hard for the child. And the child's screaming and crying and their parent walks out that door. If the kid wants to run to the door, I run with them, because it's like, I totally get it. You escaped, you left family, you left, maybe it wasn't you directly, maybe you were born in the United States, but your family left people. And to watch somebody walk out that door has layers and layers in it. So I will go with them to the door and then hold on to them and go, yeah, mom went that way. Yeah. And then she's going to come back. And first we're going to do all these things and slow down and I'm going to be with you. And I know you want to go that way with your mom, but she's going to come back from that way. And sometimes we'll just even walk outside and walk around the corner and go, oh, there she goes. There's her car. And just like to make it really intentional about, that's your experience. But I'm holding in my heart, knowing that there's so much experience underneath there that has to do with generations as well. So that's one layer of like holding the principles like at a deeper level than just thinking about, kids have a hard time at drop off. And then the other thing I do with parents is like I've really helped the parents understand that like when they are dropping off their child, I sometimes coach the parents. It's like a lot of child cares will like come up with a routine. So you're gonna do a hug and a kiss and a goodbye and with your child when you drop them off. But I go to the parents and I say, okay, so what's going to be your routine with yourself so that you can settle yourself knowing that your child's going to be okay and they're going to drop them off. And it's like, what's your routine with yourself? When you come in here, are you going to breathe 3 times and go to myself? I'm okay. I'm dropping my child off and I'm okay. And, and then I start giving the information about, I'm not sure what happened at birth, but you guys got separated. I'll just say something, but it's like, what? This has to do with his birth? He's 2 years old. Like, yeah, sometimes this happens. Not saying it's your case, but sometimes this happens. So I just start naming things, and helping the parents understand that their nervous system has to regulate so that their kid can regulate. Anyway, so there's just some other ways that try to bring into some of the principles.
Gosh, what a service you provide, Marmot. I'm really just loving listening to you and hearing what you've like insulated into your like everyday life for these kids, for their parents, for the teachers. Just so amazing. I feel like there's something I'm curious about. You said early on when you brought some of the principals to the Montessori school, and that just to sort of see what would happen when you'd bring in like frequent eye contact and things like that. And because you've had what I'm guessing a long history in early development and childcare and education, what would you say to someone who is curious about what you provide versus what other places provide, or what do you notice with their families, and what would the difference be between now and when you were 20 years ago or something?
Well, I think the big difference now is me talking about it more explicitly with my staff. and with the people around me. Like my one of my directors now, who's running things while I'm gone, she doesn't question anymore that all these women that are walking around pregnant, that it matters what's happening to that little baby inside. So there's a level of my talking about it that uh, is just like people understand. And she actually was very purposeful about having no drugs at her baby's birth. I mean, she was like, um, and so there's this certain level of just passing on the knowledge in a really practical way. And I think that's actually something I offer within the pre and perinatal community as well. And is that I'm not just a very practical person. And so it's like, I learn about something and it's like, I don't want it to be just theory. It's like, well, how are we going to use this today? Because I got a lot of people to manage. Yeah. So I think just educating people more. And then like I've given classes to other childcare workers about not just transitions, because everybody talks about transitions in childhood. It's one of the harder things. Nap time to lunchtime to going outside time, chaos happens. But I give a whole class on sequencing birth imprints and transitions in childhood, and having the women track their own sequence. When are you speeding up? When are you slowing down? Are you going to get ready to go outside? Or can you get yourself ready first? Or is that really hard for you? And do you start speeding up or slowing down? And so just so having the women track themselves. So I think I'm just more fluid in like getting them to notice for themselves, and also getting them to feel what things are like. Like when we do training days, I'll often act things out. I think they kind of think I'm a little bit crazy, but I'll act things out, and I'll do things that are like what you might classically hear in childcare. Stop, don't cry anymore. Things like that. But I'll have the women think of something really sad. Like they're all sitting there, and I'll be like, think of something really sad. Don't tell me what it is, but think about it. And I'll stop and I'll go, stop your crying. You're all done. You're finished. And they can feel it in their bodies. And they're like, that doesn't feel good. I was like, well, don't say it to the babies then. So I think the difference for me is like, what I've grown into is helping people just experience something for themselves and feel into it and go, oh, yeah, I don't like that tone of voice. I don't like being told no all the time. So positive languaging makes a difference because I can feel it inside myself. So I think some of that is what I've learned over the time of just really helping people have, and Ray taught me this a lot, of having the inside out experience of like, I have to experience something for myself. And then I can go from that place. So if women experience what it feels like when somebody talks to them in a certain way, or listens to them in a certain way, then they can be that way with kids. So I often do an example like two kids are fighting, and the person that's trying to help them resolve the fight doesn't speak the same language as the kids. It happens to me the two kids are fighting in Pashto, or somebody else doesn't speak English and the two kids are fighting English. They don't speak the same language, but you can just through gesture and emotion help the kids resolve the conflict by just looking at one kid and go, oh, yeah, yeah. And then you look at the other kid and go, oh, yeah. And you don't even have to have any words. And the kids feel seen and heard. And then this kid feels seen and heard. And then you're like, I'm going to give my attention over here now. And, Ray was a master of that. It's like, I'm going to turn my attention over here now and help the kids see that. And then everybody calms down. And, but you don't have to have any words to be able to do that. You can actually do a lot of the principles you can do without words, or you can do without the same language, just because we're all human beings, and, our emotions show on our faces and the way that we are with each other. So.
Marmot.
It's wonderful to hear your stories and how you apply this in action. I mean, I was really curious how you did this, and through these stories, I'm getting such a felt sense of what it takes to communicate from the inside out to all these different women and children and babies. And it's really beautiful. So I feel your integrity and intention behind every a story that you tell, but also how good you are at finding creative solutions to a complex situation. I really, you seem like a master at that,
No,
of finding creative solutions in a complicated situation. And I mean, you seem so passionate about this. And that's wonderful to be with and observe and witness. Like these families and these kids are so fortunate to have what you're offering. Um,
thank
I
you.
feel very grateful also to learn about this and to learn what's possible, and for caregivers to have this sense of what it's like to be a child or be in these complex situations with different languages and cultures. I feel like you find the common thread. And these children are going around being the bridges, but they also have you as the model, the master bridge maker.
Oh,
I mean,
thank
they
you.
have to learn it from somewhere. They're learning it on their
Yeah.
own. They're also learning it because they're co-regulating and they're in a safe environment and they have the freedom to do this. And you're modeling that.
Mhm. Thank you. Yeah, and I think, I mean, I feel so grateful. I mean, the women I work with are just incredible. All of them. They, I mean, our staff from the United States. I mean, they've bbeen with me and just working so hard. And sometimes we roll our eyes and we're like, oh my God, this is so hard. And then all of the other people. I mean, they're just. I feel so gifted to know them and have them be a part of my community. And have me be a part of their communities. Um, and that's the beautiful community part that's happening now is all these kids are going to birthday parties together and they're going to you know Eritrean baptisms together, they're going to Ramadan parties, they're going to different things that are part of this whole diverse community of people living and growing together. So, and on I know we have to finish up here quickly, but I would have to say that if any of you want to come over for lunch, the lunch is the food that we serve just incredible. I feel like I eat at a food truck every day. It's just I mean the kids are just growing up with this diversity of palate that's falafel and curry and beans and all kinds of things. So they get a world taste as well.
I wish I lived closer. I would definitely come by. That's my kind of food. I love it.
I wonder, oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I wonder as we're starting to come toward the end of our conversation, I wonder if there's something, this video is being watched by many people that may have different experiences, maybe in different parts of the world even. And so I just wonder if there's something about your experience. I feel like I always learn so much from you in hearing about twigs, and I wonder if there's something that from your insight from twigs you'd want to communicate to people, even worldwide, from your experience. I know that's kind of a big question, but um, I wonder what comes to mind.
Well,
Well,
I think of one of those principles of just mutual support and cooperation. It's like if we use that as our guiding light, um, we can have all kinds of differences, and yet really hold on to that, um, and and gratitude for what the differences bring, because I have learned so much about child rearing that um, maybe really different than what I thought was right. I mean, there's so many right ways to raise children in the world, right? And they're all amazing ways to raise children. Um, and and so it's not about being right. It's about learning from each other, about how to raise the next generation so that they can be a peace loving generation. Um, and then I would also say that there's this misnomer that this idea that children and babies are colorblind, right? That they just see everybody and they accept everybody. That is not true at all. I don't know who did all the research about when children start noticing race and differences, but um, you know, they notice very young. Then they have preferences very young. I mean, I've had Black children want only me and just me at a very young age. And it has something to do with a caregiver they had at one point or somebody that had a relationship with them and they only want me. And then I have other kids that are just Caucasian from Montana, born here, and their person, they are bonded to a Congolese person or somebody wearing a hijab. And it's like they want that person. And from, by the time they can reach, so 7, 8 months, it's like they have very strong preferences about who they want to be with and what languages they want to hear, um, and things like that. And so we can teach children like that all the differences, their differences, and they get to have preference, and that we all can try and get along. And when kids are exposed super young, I think their breadth of like what they're willing to try and work at to communicate and be with people is just much broader. And I think that lasts a lifetime.
Mm.
And I would have to say the one more thing I would say is about gratitude, because doing this job and working very hard and just being so grateful for all the people that come and teach me things, because I mess up, like I said, every day. And then for the support that I got along the way, especially my wife, I could not have created the school that I did without her support, like all the time. She worked really hard. And then my sister has also just been at my back, helping me through it. So, but anyways, the women have taught me a lot about being grateful for the small things in life too, and the big things.
Well, thank you so much, Marmot. What great messages to end our interview with. And it's been such a pleasure having you here with us. And I really hope that a lot of people get to watch and learn more about you and some of the lessons you've taught and stories you've told us. So thank you again for being with us here at the Hearth.
Thank you, Marmot.
Thank you, Mara.
Thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it. I love talking about it.